Eleanor Gray's life was a masterpiece of perfection. Her lavish mansion, grand dinner parties, and wealthy husband, Matthew, made her the envy of everyone. But beneath the surface of her polished smile and poised demeanor, a storm was brewing. As she stood beside Matthew, toasting with their guests, Eleanor's eyes flickered with suspicion. She knew something he didn't, and that knowledge was eating away at her. That night, as the partygoers departed and the mansion grew quiet, Eleanor snuck into Matthew's private office. Her heart racing, she opened his laptop and discovered a secret email. The subject line read, "Confirmation, offshore account transfer." As she clicked on the email, screens flashed before her eyes, revealing millions of dollars funneled into a secret bank account. Transactions dating back years. Eleanor's world crumbled. This wasn't just a hidden account. It was stolen money. From her. A sound behind her made her slam the laptop shut. Matthew's smooth voice cut through the silence. "Can't sleep, darling?" Eleanor forced a smile, hiding her fury. But inside, a storm was brewing. Determined to uncover the truth, Eleanor hired a private investigator. Grainy photos revealed Matthew's affair with a younger woman. Fancy hotels, private jets, and candlelit dinners. Eleanor's rage simmered, fueled by betrayal. The detective's words echoed in her mind. It's not just an affair. He's been planning something big. Eleanor's plan began to take shape. She would give Matthew something bigger to worry about. As the days passed, Eleanor played the loving wife, pretending nothing was wrong. But behind the scenes, she moved the pieces carefully, transferring money, hiring experts, and preparing her final move. A luxurious weekend getaway to a private villa seemed like the perfect opportunity to confront Matthew. As they toasted under the candlelight, Eleanor finally spoke. "I know everything, Matthew." His smirk faltered, and the game changed. Matthew laughed it off at first, but Eleanor laid out the evidence. The money, the mistress, the betrayal. His face darkened. "You don't know who you're playing with," Matthew threatened. Eleanor leaned in, unafraid. "Neither do you." With a sip of wine and a flick of her wrist, Matthew choked. His eyes widened in shock as the poison worked its deadly magic. Eleanor watched, unblinking, as her husband collapsed. As she leaned over him, whispering her final words, Eleanor's smile was a masterpiece of perfection. "You built this fortune on lies. Now I'll rebuild it, without you. The perfect crime? Or just the beginning?" As Eleanor calmly finished her wine, the darkness closed in around her. Weeks later, at Matthew's funeral, Eleanor accepted condolences with a face unreadable. The media called it a tragic heart attack. But as she turned away, a familiar figure lingered in the shadows. Matthew's mistress. Watching. Waiting. Eleanor's slow smile crept onto her lips. She was ready for round two. The dead don't talk, but the living always make mistakes. And Eleanor was ready to capitalize on those mistakes. As the darkness closed in around her, Eleanor's voice whispered in the shadows. "The game is far from over. It's only just beginning." As the days passed, Eleanor's smile grew wider, and her eyes sparkled with a newfound sense of purpose. She had taken control of her life, and she was determined to make the most of it. But as she walked through the mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, expecting to see Matthew's mistress lurking in the shadows. But there was no one there. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She knew that she had to be careful. She had taken down her husband, but she knew that there were still those who would seek to destroy her. As she entered her bedroom, Eleanor's gaze fell upon a small, unassuming package on her nightstand. It was wrapped in plain brown paper, with no indication of who might have sent it. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she picked up the package. She carefully unwrapped the paper, revealing a small, leather-bound book. As she opened the book, Eleanor's eyes widened in shock. The pages were filled with photographs, each one depicting a different aspect of her life. There were pictures of her and Matthew, of her children, of her friends. But it was the final photograph that made Eleanor's blood run cold. It was a picture of her, standing over Matthew's lifeless body, a smile on her face. Eleanor's eyes snapped up, her heart racing. Who could have taken this photograph? And what did they want from her? As she stood there, frozen in fear, Eleanor heard a faint whisper in her ear. "You think you've won, Eleanor, but the game is far from over." Eleanor spun around, but there was no one there. The whisper seemed to come from all around her, echoing off the walls. She knew then that she was in grave danger. Someone had been watching her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She would not be intimidated. She would fight back with every ounce of strength she possessed. The game was far from over, and Eleanor was ready to play. Eleanor's mind was racing as she tried to piece together the mystery of the photograph. Who could have taken it? And what did they want from her? She knew she had to be careful. She couldn't trust anyone, not even her closest friends and family. As she walked through the mansion, Eleanor's eyes scanned the rooms, searching for any sign of an intruder. But everything seemed normal. She decided to investigate further. She went to her study and started searching through her files, looking for any clues that might lead her to the person who had taken the photograph. As she searched, Eleanor's phone rang. She hesitated for a moment before answering it. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. "Eleanor, it's me," a voice said on the other end of the line. "I know what you did." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. "Who is this?" she demanded. "You know who I am," the voice said. "And I know all about your little secret." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to meet with you," the voice said. "In person. Tonight." Eleanor hesitated for a moment. She didn't know who this person was or what they wanted, but she knew she had to be careful. "Where do you want to meet?" she asked. "There's a small cafe on the outskirts of town," the voice said. "Meet me there at midnight." Eleanor nodded, even though the person on the other end of the line couldn't see her. "I'll be there," she said. As she hung up the phone, Eleanor's mind was racing. Who was this person? And what did they want from her? She knew she had to be careful. She couldn't trust anyone, not even herself. As the clock struck midnight, Eleanor made her way to the small cafe on the outskirts of town. She was nervous, but she was determined to face whatever was coming her way. As she walked into the cafe, Eleanor saw a figure sitting in the corner, sipping a cup of coffee. The figure looked up and caught her eye. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. It was a woman she had never seen before, but there was something familiar about her. "Who are you?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman smiled. I'm someone who knows all about your secrets, she said, and I'm here to make you pay. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. What do you want from me? She asked. The woman leaned forward, her eyes glinting with malice. I want everything, she said. Your money, your mansion, your life. Eleanor's heart was racing. She knew she had to think fast. She couldn't let this woman destroy her. But as she looked into the woman's eyes, Eleanor saw something that made her blood run cold. It was a glimmer of recognition. This woman wasn't just anyone. She was someone from Eleanor's past. Someone she thought she had left behind forever. Eleanor's eyes widened as she stared at the woman, her mind racing with memories. She had thought she had left her past behind, but it seemed that it had finally caught up with her. Who are you? Eleanor asked again, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. The woman smiled, seeming to enjoy Eleanor's distress. You don't remember me, do you? She said, her voice dripping with malice. I'm surprised. I thought you'd never forget me. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, her mind racing with memories. And then suddenly it clicked. She remembered the woman, remembered the pain and the suffering she had caused. You're Sarah, Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, her smile growing wider. That's right, she said. I'm Sarah, your old friend from college. The one you thought you'd left behind forever. Eleanor's eyes flashed with anger. What do you want from me? She demanded. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes glinting with malice. I want what's mine, she said. I want the life you stole from me. Eleanor's heart was racing, her mind reeling with memories. She had thought she had left her past behind, but it seemed that it had finally caught up with her. As she stared at Sarah, Eleanor knew that she had to think fast. She couldn't let Sarah destroy her. Not now, not after everything she had been through. But as she looked into Sarah's eyes, Eleanor saw something that made her blood run cold. It was a glimmer of madness, a spark of obsession that seemed to burn brighter with every passing moment. Eleanor knew then that she was in grave danger. Sarah was not just a woman from her past. She was a force of nature, driven by a desire for revenge that seemed to know no bounds. As the clock ticked on, Eleanor knew that she had to act fast. She had to stop Sarah before it was too late, before she destroyed everything that Eleanor had worked so hard to build. But as she looked into Sarah's eyes, Eleanor knew that it wouldn't be easy. Sarah was a woman on a mission, driven by a desire for revenge that seemed to burn brighter with every passing moment. And Eleanor knew that she was the only one who could stop her. Eleanor's mind was racing with thoughts of how to stop Sarah. She knew that she had to be careful, that one wrong move could lead to disaster. As she sat there, trying to think of a plan, Sarah began to speak. Her voice was low and menacing, and it sent shivers down Eleanor's spine. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Sarah said, her eyes flashing with anger. You think you can just leave me behind and start a new life without any consequences? Eleanor shook her head, trying to reason with Sarah. That's not what happened, Sarah, she said. I was young and stupid, and I made mistakes. But I've paid for those mistakes, and I've moved on. Sarah laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. You think you've paid for your mistakes? She said. You have no idea what it's like to be me, to be the one who is left behind. Eleanor felt a surge of fear as Sarah's words hung in the air. She knew that she had to do something, but she didn't know what. As she sat there, frozen with fear, Sarah began to stand up. Her eyes were blazing with anger, and her hands were clenched into fists. "I'm going to make you pay for what you did to me," Sarah said, her voice low and menacing. "I'm going to make you suffer." Eleanor knew that she had to act fast. She pushed her chair back and stood up, trying to reason with Sarah. "Sarah, please," she said. "Don't do this. Let's talk about this. Let's work something out." But Sarah just laughed again, a cold, mirthless sound. "You think talking is going to solve anything?" she said. "You think apologies and excuses are going to make everything okay?" Eleanor shook her head, feeling a sense of desperation. "No, Sarah," she said. "I just want to make things right between us. I want to move forward, not backwards." Sarah's eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer to Eleanor. "You want to move forward?" she said. "You want to leave the past behind? Well, I've got news for you, Eleanor. The past isn't going anywhere, and neither am I." As Sarah's words hung in the air, Eleanor knew that she was in grave danger. She had to think fast, had to come up with a plan to stop Sarah before it was too late. But as she looked into Sarah's eyes, Eleanor knew that she was running out of time. Sarah's anger and hatred were boiling over, and Eleanor was the only one who could stop her. Eleanor's mind was racing as she tried to think of a way to stop Sarah. She knew that she had to act fast before Sarah's anger and hatred boiled over into violence. As she stood there, frozen with fear, Eleanor suddenly remembered a detail from her past. A detail that she had long forgotten, but which might just hold the key to stopping Sarah. "Sarah, wait," Eleanor said, her voice shaking with fear. "I remember something. Something that might change everything." Sarah's eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer to Eleanor. "What is it?" she spat. "What could you possibly remember that would make a difference?" Eleanor took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "I remember that you were involved in a scandal," she said. "A scandal that could ruin your reputation and destroy your life." Sarah's eyes widened, and she took a step back. For a moment, Eleanor thought she saw a glimmer of fear in Sarah's eyes. But then, Sarah's face hardened, and she sneered at Eleanor. "You think you can blackmail me?" she said. "You think you can use that against me?" Eleanor shook her head. "No, Sarah," she said. "I'm not trying to blackmail you. I'm just trying to stop you before you do something that you'll regret." Sarah's eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer to Eleanor. "You're too late," she said. "I've already done what I came here to do. And now, it's time for you to pay the price." As Sarah's words hung in the air, Eleanor knew that she was running out of time. She had to think fast, had to come up with a plan to stop Sarah before it was too late. But as she looked into Sarah's eyes, Eleanor knew that she was in grave danger. Sarah's anger and hatred had boiled over into madness, and Eleanor was the only one who could stop her. With a surge of adrenaline, Eleanor made a split-second decision. She turned and ran, dashing out of the room and down the hallway. As she ran, Eleanor could hear Sarah's footsteps behind her. She knew that she had to keep running, had to find a way to escape before Sarah caught up to her. But as she turned a corner, Eleanor saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A figure was standing in the shadows, watching her. And as Eleanor's eyes locked onto the figure, she knew that she was in even greater danger than she had thought. The figure was someone she knew, someone she had trusted. But now, Eleanor realized that she had made a terrible mistake. The figure was not what they seemed, and Eleanor was about to find herself in a desperate fight for survival. As Eleanor's eyes locked onto the figure, she felt a chill run down her spine. It was her business partner, James. She had trusted him with her life, and now she wasn't so sure. James stepped forward, a sly smile spreading across his face. "Eleanor, what's going on?" he asked, his voice dripping with concern. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here, James?" she asked, her voice firm. James chuckled. "I could ask you the same thing," he said, "but I think I already know. You're running from Sarah, aren't you?" Eleanor's eyes widened. "How do you know about Sarah?" she asked. James shrugged. "I have my ways," he said. "But don't worry, Eleanor. I'm here to help you." Eleanor's instincts were screaming at her to run, but her legs seemed rooted to the spot. She couldn't believe that James was involved in this somehow. As she stood there, frozen with fear, James took another step closer to her. "Eleanor, I think it's time we had a little chat," he said, his voice dripping with menace. Eleanor's heart was racing as she realized that she was trapped. James was blocking her way, and Sarah was closing in behind her. With a surge of adrenaline, Eleanor made a split-second decision. She turned and ran, dashing past James and down the hallway. As she ran, Eleanor could hear James's footsteps behind her. She knew that she had to keep running, had to find a way to escape before James and Sarah caught up to her. But as she turned a corner, Eleanor saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A door was open, leading out into the night. Without hesitation, Eleanor dashed through the door and out into the darkness. She knew that she had to keep moving, had to find a way to get away from James and Sarah. As she ran through the night, Eleanor's heart was pounding in her chest. She knew that she was running for her life, and she wasn't sure if she would make it out alive. But she refused to give up. She kept running, her feet pounding the pavement, until she finally saw a glimmer of light in the distance. It was a police station. Eleanor's heart leapt with hope as she dashed towards the door. She burst through the door, gasping for breath. "Help me," she cried, running up to the desk. "Please, you have to help me." The officer behind the desk looked up, startled. "Ma'am, what's wrong?" he asked. Eleanor took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "I'm being stalked," she said, "by two people. They're trying to kill me." The officer's expression turned serious. "Okay, ma'am," he said. "We'll do everything we can to help you. But first, we need to get you to a safe place." Eleanor nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She knew that she was finally safe, that she had made it out alive. But as she looked back over her shoulder, she saw something that made her blood run cold. James and Sarah were standing in the shadows, watching her. And Eleanor knew that she wasn't safe yet, not by a long shot. The officer quickly ushered Eleanor into a secure room, locking the door behind her. "We'll get you into protective custody," he said. "But first, we need to get a statement from you." Eleanor nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. She took a deep breath and began to recount her story, starting from the moment she had discovered Matthew's affair. As she spoke, the officer listened intently, his expression growing more serious by the minute. When Eleanor finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "I think we have enough to get started," he said. "But I need to ask you something. Do you have any idea why James and Sarah would be working together? Eleanor hesitated, unsure of how to answer. I don't know, she said finally, but I think it has something to do with Matthew's business dealings. He was involved in some shady stuff, and I think James and Sarah might be trying to cover their tracks. The officer nodded, his eyes narrowing. I see, he said. Well, we'll look into it. But in the meantime, we need to get you to a safe location. Can you think of anyone who might be able to help us? Eleanor thought for a moment before nodding. There's one person, she said. A friend from college. She's a lawyer, and she's been helping me with some of Matthew's business dealings. Her name is Rachel. The officer nodded, jotting down Rachel's name in his notebook. We'll get in touch with her, he said. But for now, let's get you to a safe location. We'll have someone escort you to a secure facility, and we'll keep you there until we can figure out what's going on. Eleanor nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She knew that she was in good hands, and that the police would do everything they could to keep her safe. As she followed the officer out of the station, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. She knew that she still had a long way to go, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like she might actually make it through this alive. But as they walked out into the bright sunlight, Eleanor caught a glimpse of something that made her blood run cold. A figure was watching her from across the street, a figure who looked uncannily like Matthew. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she froze, her eyes locked on the figure. The officer followed her gaze, his expression turning serious. What is it? He asked, his hand on his gun. Eleanor's voice was barely above a whisper. It's Matthew, she said. He's supposed to be dead, but I think he might be alive. The officer's eyes widened in surprise, and he quickly pulled out his radio to call for backup. We need to get you out of here now, he said, his voice firm and urgent. Eleanor nodded, still in shock from seeing Matthew's doppelganger. She couldn't believe that he might be alive, that everything she had thought she knew about her husband's death might be a lie. As the officer led her away from the scene, Eleanor's mind was racing with questions. How could Matthew be alive? Who had been behind his supposed death? And what did it all have to do with James and Sarah? The officer ushered her into a waiting police car, and they sped away from the scene. Eleanor looked back, trying to catch another glimpse of the figure, but he was gone. As they drove, the officer filled her in on the plan. We'll take you to a safe house, he said. You'll be protected there until we can figure out what's going on. Eleanor nodded, still trying to process everything. She knew that she had to be careful, that she couldn't trust anyone. But she also knew that she had to get to the bottom of this mystery, no matter what it took. As they arrived at the safe house, Eleanor was greeted by a team of police officers and a woman who introduced herself as Rachel, her friend from college. Rachel hugged her tightly. I'm so glad you're safe, she said. I've been worried sick about you. Eleanor smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She knew that she could trust Rachel, and that with her help, she might finally be able to uncover the truth. But as they sat down to talk, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She looked around the room, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until she glanced out the window that she saw him. The figure from across the street, the one who looked like Matthew. He was standing outside the safe house, watching her. And this time, Eleanor knew that she wasn't imagining things. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she saw the figure standing outside the safe house. She knew that she had to act fast, to get the police to protect her. "Rachel, I think he's here," Eleanor said, her voice shaking with fear. Rachel's eyes widened as she followed Eleanor's gaze. "Oh my God, it's him," she said. The police officers sprang into action, rushing to the windows to get a better look. One of them grabbed the phone and dialed a number, calling for backup. Eleanor watched in horror as the figure began to move towards the safe house. She knew that she had to get out of there, to get to a safer location. The police officers quickly ushered her and Rachel out of the safe house, leading them to a waiting police car. As they drove away, Eleanor looked back, seeing the figure standing in the distance, watching her. She knew that she couldn't shake him off that easily. He was determined to find her, to hurt her. And Eleanor was determined to stop him, no matter what it took. As they drove to a new location, Eleanor's mind was racing with thoughts. She knew that she had to get to the bottom of this mystery, to find out who was behind Matthew's supposed death and why they were after her. Rachel put a hand on her arm, trying to comfort her. "We'll get through this, Eleanor," she said. "We'll find out who's behind this, and we'll make them pay." Eleanor nodded, feeling a sense of determination wash over her. She was ready to fight back, to take control of her life, and to uncover the truth. But as they arrived at the new location, a secluded cabin in the woods, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She looked around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until she went inside and saw a piece of paper on the table that she realized she was right. The paper had a message scrawled on it, a message that made Eleanor's blood run cold. "I'll always find you," it read. Eleanor's heart sank as she read the message. She knew that she had to get out of there, to find a new place to hide. But as she turned to Rachel, she saw that her friend was frozen in terror. "Rachel, we have to go," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice steady. But Rachel didn't move. She just stared at the message, her eyes wide with fear. Eleanor knew that she had to act fast. She grabbed Rachel's arm and pulled her towards the door. "We have to get out of here now," she said. As they ran out of the cabin, Eleanor could feel eyes watching her. She knew that she was being hunted and that she had to find a way to stop it. They ran through the woods, not stopping until they were back in the police car. The officer driving them looked at them with concern. "What happened?" he asked. Eleanor took a deep breath. "The person who's been following me, they were at the cabin," she said. "They left a message." The officer's expression turned grim. "We'll get you to a new location," he said. "Somewhere safe." But as they drove away, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She looked out the window, but saw nothing. It wasn't until they arrived at the new location, a secure hotel room, that Eleanor finally felt safe. She locked the door and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. Rachel sat down on the bed, looking at her with concern. "Eleanor, we have to figure out who's behind this," she said. "We can't keep running forever." Eleanor nodded, knowing that Rachel was right. She took a deep breath and began to think, trying to piece together the clues. As she thought, a name kept popping into her head.
James.
Her business partner. She had always trusted him, but now she wasn't so sure. "Rachel, I think I know who might be behind this," Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. Rachel looked at her with surprise. "Who?" she asked. Eleanor took a deep breath. "James," she said. "My business partner." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. "Why do you think it's him?" she asked. Eleanor hesitated, unsure of how to explain. But as she looked at Rachel, she knew that she had to tell the truth. "I think it's him because he's been acting strange lately," Eleanor said. "And I found out that he's been embezzling money from our company." Rachel's expression turned grim. "We need to tell the police," she said. Eleanor nodded, knowing that Rachel was right. She picked up the phone and dialed the police department, asking to speak to the officer who had been helping her. As she waited for the officer to arrive, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She looked around the room, but saw nothing. It wasn't until the officer arrived and began to question her about James that Eleanor finally felt safe. She knew that she had taken the first step towards uncovering the truth, and that she was one step closer to stopping the person who was hunting her. As the officer took notes and asked questions, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over her. She had finally taken the first step towards uncovering the truth, and she knew that she was one step closer to stopping the person who was hunting her. But just as she was starting to feel a sense of hope, the officer's expression turned serious. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something," he said. "We've received some new evidence that suggests James may not be the only one involved in this." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer hesitated before speaking. "We've received a tip that suggests Matthew may still be alive," he said. Eleanor's eyes widened in shock as she felt like she had been punched in the gut. "That's impossible," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I saw his body. I identified him." The officer nodded. "I know, Eleanor. But we have reason to believe that Matthew may have faked his own death. And if that's the case, then we need to consider the possibility that he may be involved in this too." Eleanor's mind was reeling as she tried to process this new information. She had thought that she was getting closer to the truth, but now she felt like she was further away than ever. As the officer continued to question her, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was in grave danger. She knew that she had to be careful, that she couldn't trust anyone. But as she looked at the officer, she saw something in his eyes that made her feel a sense of hope. It was a glimmer of determination, a sense that he was committed to uncovering the truth. And in that moment, Eleanor knew that she could trust him. She knew that she had found an ally, someone who would help her uncover the truth and bring her husband to justice. With newfound determination, Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes locked on the officer's. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes to uncover the truth," she said, her voice firm and resolute. The officer nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I knew I could count on you, Eleanor," he said. "Together, we'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll make sure that justice is served." As the officer and Eleanor continued to discuss the case, they began to piece together the evidence they had collected so far. They knew that James was involved, and now they had reason to believe that Matthew might be alive and involved as well. But there were still so many questions. Why had Matthew faked his own death? What was his motive? And how was James involved? Eleanor's mind was racing with possibilities. She knew that she had to be careful, that she couldn't trust anyone. But she also knew that she had to keep pushing forward, no matter how difficult it got. Just as they were about to wrap up their discussion, the officer's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, and then turned to Eleanor with a serious expression. "What is it?" Eleanor asked, her heart racing with anticipation. "It's the lab," the officer said. They've finished processing the evidence from the safe house, and they've found something interesting. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes locked on the officer's. "What is it?" she asked again. The officer hesitated before speaking. "They've found a DNA match," he said. "It's a match to Matthew's DNA." Eleanor's eyes widened in shock. "That means he's alive," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer nodded. "It looks that way," he said. "But we still don't know why he faked his own death or what he's involved in. We need to keep investigating." Eleanor nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew that she had to be careful, that she couldn't trust anyone. But she also knew that she had to keep pushing forward, no matter how difficult it got. As they continued to discuss the case, Eleanor's phone rang. She hesitated before answering it, wondering who it could be. But as she looked at the caller ID, her heart skipped a beat. It was a number she didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end was one she knew all too well. "Eleanor," the voice said. "We need to talk." Eleanor's eyes locked on the officer's, her heart racing with fear. "Who is this?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The voice chuckled. "You know exactly who this is," it said. "It's Matthew. And I'm alive." Eleanor's eyes widened in shock as she listened to Matthew's voice on the other end of the line. She couldn't believe it. He was alive. The officer's eyes locked on hers, and he mouthed, "Who is it?" Eleanor hesitated for a moment before answering. "It's Matthew," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer's expression turned serious, and he quickly grabbed his notebook and pen. "What does he want?" the officer mouthed. Eleanor shook her head, unsure of how to answer. She listened to Matthew's voice on the other end of the line, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "Eleanor, I know you're working with the police," Matthew said, "but I need to talk to you. Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th and Main at midnight. Come alone." Eleanor's heart was racing as she listened to Matthew's instructions. She knew that she couldn't trust him, but she also knew that she had to hear what he had to say. She looked at the officer, who was shaking his head. "Don't do it," he mouthed. "It's a trap." But Eleanor knew that she had to take the risk. She nodded, and then spoke into the phone. "I'll be there," she said. Matthew's voice chuckled on the other end of the line. "I knew you'd come," he said. "See you at midnight." Eleanor hung up the phone, her heart still racing with fear. She knew that she had just made a deal with the devil, but she also knew that she had to see this through. The officer looked at her, his expression serious. "Eleanor, I don't think this is a good idea," he said. "We can't protect you if you go in alone." Eleanor shook her head. "I have to do this," she said. "I have to know what's going on." The officer sighed, but eventually nodded. "Okay," he said, "but we'll be watching from a distance. If anything goes wrong, we'll be there in a heartbeat." Eleanor nodded, feeling a sense of determination wash over her. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, no matter how scary it might be. As the clock struck midnight, Eleanor made her way to the old warehouse on 5th and Main. She was alone, but she knew that the police were watching from a distance. As she approached the warehouse, she saw a figure waiting for her in the shadows. It was Matthew, and he was smiling. "Welcome, Eleanor," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "I've been waiting for you." Eleanor's heart was racing as she approached Matthew. She couldn't believe that he was alive, and she was determined to find out what he had been up to. "What do you want, Matthew?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Matthew chuckled, his eyes glinting with amusement. "I want to show you something," he said, gesturing to a nearby door. Eleanor hesitated, unsure of what to do, but something about Matthew's demeanor made her feel like she had to see this through. She nodded, and Matthew led her to the door. He opened it, revealing a dimly lit room filled with rows of computers and surveillance equipment. Eleanor's eyes widened as she took in the scene. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Matthew smiled, his eyes gleaming with pride. "This is my operation," he said. "I've been watching you, Eleanor. I've been watching everyone." Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the extent of Matthew's surveillance. She knew that she had to get out of there, and fast. But as she turned to leave, Matthew caught her arm. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice cold and menacing. Eleanor tried to struggle, but Matthew's grip was too strong. She was trapped. Just as she was starting to lose hope, Eleanor heard a noise coming from outside the room. It was the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Matthew's eyes flicked towards the door, and for a moment, Eleanor saw a glimmer of fear in his eyes. The door burst open, and a team of police officers stormed into the room. "Matthew, you're under arrest," one of them said, handcuffs at the ready. Eleanor felt a wave of relief wash over her as she realized that she was safe. She was finally free from Matthew's grasp. But as she looked at Matthew, she saw something that made her blood run cold. He was smiling, a cold and calculating smile. "This isn't over," he said, his eyes locked on hers. Eleanor shivered, knowing that she would never be able to escape Matthew's wrath completely. But for now, she was safe. As the police officers led Matthew away in handcuffs, Eleanor felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had finally escaped the nightmare that had been haunting her for weeks. But as she turned to leave, she saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was James, her business partner. "Eleanor, he started to say, but Eleanor cut him off. "You're involved in this too, aren't you?" she accused, her voice shaking with anger. James looked taken aback, but then a sly smile spread across his face. "I'm just trying to protect my interests," he said. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" she demanded. James shrugged. "Let's just say that Matthew and I had a mutually beneficial arrangement. And now that he's been caught, I need to make sure that I'm protected." Eleanor's mind was racing. She knew that James was involved in something shady, but she had no idea what. Suddenly, the police officer who had arrested Matthew spoke up. "James, you're coming with us too," he said. James's smile faltered, and he took a step back. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. The officer smiled. "We have evidence that links you to Matthew's crimes. You're going down for this, James." As the police officers led James away in handcuffs, Eleanor felt a sense of satisfaction. She had finally brought the people responsible for her husband's fake death and the subsequent harassment to justice. But as she turned to leave, she saw a piece of paper on the floor. It was a note, written in Matthew's handwriting. "Eleanor, you may have won this battle," it read, "but the war is far from over." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she realized that Matthew had planned for every eventuality. He had left a trail of clues, and she had a feeling that she was about to uncover a whole lot more. With a sense of trepidation, Eleanor picked up the note and put it in her pocket. She knew that she had to be careful, that she had to watch her back. But she was ready for whatever came next. She was ready to face the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. As Eleanor walked out of the warehouse, she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being watched. She looked around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. She took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. She had just brought 2 people to justice, and she should be feeling relieved and vindicated. But as she walked back to her car, she noticed a piece of paper on the windshield. It was another note, written in the same handwriting as the previous one. Eleanor, you think you've won, but you've only just begun to play the game, it read. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she realized that Matthew had planned for every eventuality. He had left a trail of clues, and she had a feeling that she was about to uncover a whole lot more. She looked around, trying to see if anyone was watching her. But the parking lot was empty, and she was alone. With a sense of trepidation, Eleanor got into her car and started the engine. She knew that she had to be careful, that she had to watch her back. As she drove away from the warehouse, she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being followed. She looked in the rearview mirror, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. But then, she noticed a black SUV following her. It was a few cars behind, but she could see the driver's face clearly. It was a woman, with a cold and calculating expression. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she realized that she was in danger. She sped up, trying to lose the SUV in traffic. But the woman was a skilled driver, and she kept up with Eleanor easily. Eleanor knew that she had to think fast, that she had to come up with a plan to shake the SUV. She looked around, trying to see if there were any police cars nearby. And then she saw a police station up ahead. She sped towards it, hoping to lose the SUV in the process. As she pulled into the police station, the SUV followed her. But Eleanor was ready. She jumped out of her car and ran into the police station, slamming the door shut behind her. She was safe for the moment, but she knew that the woman in the SUV would be back, and next time, Eleanor might not be so lucky. Eleanor ran to the front desk, out of breath. "I need help," she said to the officer behind the desk. "Someone is following me." The officer looked up, concerned. "Okay, ma'am. Can you tell me more about what's going on?" Eleanor nodded, trying to catch her breath. "I was just at the warehouse where Matthew was arrested. I found a note on my car, and then I saw a black SUV following me. The driver was a woman with a cold expression." The officer's expression turned serious. "I'm going to need you to fill out a report," he said. "And we'll get someone to look at the security footage to see if we can identify the woman." Eleanor nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She was safe for the moment. As she filled out the report, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was in grave danger. She knew that Matthew had planned for every eventuality, and she had a feeling that she was just starting to uncover the truth. When she finished the report, the officer handed her a cup of coffee. "We'll do everything we can to keep you safe," he said. "But in the meantime, I need you to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone, and keep your phone close." Eleanor nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards the officer. She knew that she could trust him, and that he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. As she left the police station, Eleanor felt a sense of determination wash over her. She was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. She got into her car and started the engine, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She was safe for the moment. But as she pulled out of the parking lot, she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. A small piece of paper on the windshield, with a message scrawled on it. "You'll never be safe," it read. Eleanor's eyes widened in fear as she realized that she was in grave danger. She knew that she had to get out of there, fast. She sped away from the police station, her heart racing with fear. She knew that she had to find a safe place to hide, and fast. But as she drove, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She looked in the rearview mirror, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Or so she thought. As she looked closer, she saw a small GPS tracker attached to the back of her car. Someone had been tracking her movements, and she had no idea who. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she realized the truth. She was in grave danger, and she had to get out of there, fast. Eleanor's mind was racing as she tried to process what she had just seen. She knew that she had to get rid of the GPS tracker, but she also knew that she couldn't just stop the car and remove it. She had to keep moving and find a safe place to hide. She quickly scanned her surroundings, looking for a place to duck into. She spotted a nearby parking garage and made a split-second decision to drive into it. As she drove through the garage, Eleanor kept a close eye on the rearview mirror, watching for any signs of pursuit. She didn't see anyone following her, but she knew that didn't mean she was safe. She parked the car in a secluded spot and quickly got out, looking around to make sure she was alone. She then reached under the car and removed the GPS tracker, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. But as she stood up and looked around, Eleanor realized that she wasn't alone. A figure was standing in the shadows, watching her. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she tried to make out the figure's features. But it was too dark and she couldn't see anything. The figure took a step closer and Eleanor's instincts told her to run. But she stood her ground, trying to be brave. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The figure took another step closer, and Eleanor saw a glimmer of light reflect off something in their hand. It was a gun. Eleanor's heart was racing as she realized that she was in grave danger. She tried to think of something to say, something to distract the figure, and give her time to escape. But before she could say anything, the figure spoke. "You're a hard woman to find, Eleanor," they said. "But I've finally found you." Eleanor's eyes widened as she realized who the figure was. It was Rachel, her friend from college. But something was off. Rachel's eyes seemed cold and calculating, and her voice was menacing. "What's going on, Rachel?" Eleanor asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Rachel smiled, a cold and calculating smile. "You'll find out soon enough," she said. "But for now, let's just say that I've been playing a little game with you, Eleanor. And you're about to become the main player." Eleanor's mind was racing as she tried to process what was happening. Rachel, her friend from college, was standing in front of her with a gun, and she had no idea why. "Rachel, what's going on?" Eleanor asked again, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why are you doing this?" Rachel's smile grew wider. "You really don't remember, do you?" she asked. "You don't remember what happened all those years ago?" Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" she asked. Rachel's eyes seemed to glaze over, and she began to speak in a monotone voice. "We were roommates, Eleanor. We were friends. But then something happened. Something that changed everything." Eleanor's mind was racing. She had no idea what Rachel was talking about. "What happened?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rachel's eyes snapped back into focus. "You really don't remember, do you?" she asked again. You don't remember the night that Matthew died. Eleanor's eyes widened. Matthew died, she repeated. But I thought he was alive. I thought he was the one who had been stalking me. Rachel's smile grew wider. Oh, Eleanor, she said. You really are so clueless. Matthew is dead. He's been dead for years. But you're the one who killed him. Eleanor's eyes widened in shock. No, she said, her voice shaking. That's not true. I didn't kill anyone. Rachel's smile grew wider. Oh, Eleanor, she said. You really don't remember, do you? You don't remember the night that you and Matthew got into a fight. You don't remember the night that you killed him. Eleanor's mind was reeling. She had no idea what Rachel was talking about. She didn't remember killing anyone. But as she looked into Rachel's eyes, she saw something there that made her blood run cold. She saw a glimmer of truth. And suddenly, Eleanor's memories came flooding back. She remembered the night that she and Matthew got into a fight. She remembered the night that she killed him. Eleanor's eyes widened in horror as she realized the truth. She had killed Matthew, and Rachel had been covering it up for her all these years.
But why?
Why had Rachel been covering up for her? And then Eleanor remembered something else. She remembered the promise that Rachel had made to her all those years ago. I'll always protect you, Eleanor, Rachel had said. No matter what. Eleanor's eyes locked onto Rachel's, and she saw the truth there. Rachel had been protecting her all these years. But at what cost? And then Eleanor realized something else. Rachel wasn't just protecting her. She was also controlling her. Eleanor's eyes widened in horror as she realized the truth. She had been living a lie that Rachel had created for her. And now, Eleanor was trapped in a web of deceit and lies. And she didn't know how to escape. Eleanor's mind was reeling as she tried to process the truth. She had killed Matthew, and Rachel had been covering it up for her all these years.
But why?
Why had Rachel been so desperate to keep the truth hidden? And then, Eleanor remembered something else. She remembered the conversation she had with Rachel just a few days ago. I've been taking care of you, Eleanor, Rachel had said. I've been making sure that you're safe. Eleanor's eyes narrowed as she realized the truth. Rachel hadn't been taking care of her out of kindness. She had been taking care of her out of necessity. Rachel had been using her, manipulating her, and controlling her. And Eleanor had been oblivious to it all. Eleanor's anger boiled over as she realized the truth. She took a step forward, her eyes locked on Rachel's. You've been using me, Eleanor spat. You've been manipulating me, controlling me, and I don't even know why. Rachel's smile faltered, and for a moment, Eleanor saw a glimmer of fear in her eyes. I did it to protect you, Rachel said, her voice shaking. I did it to keep you safe. Eleanor laughed, a cold, hard laugh. Safe? She repeated. You call this safe? You've been controlling my every move, manipulating me like a puppet on a string. And you call that safe? Rachel took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. Eleanor, please, she said. You don't understand. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. I understand perfectly, she said. You've been using me, Rachel. And now, it's time for you to pay the price. Eleanor took another step forward, her eyes locked on Rachel's. And then, everything went black. When Eleanor came to, she was lying on the floor, her head throbbing with pain. Rachel was standing over her, a look of concern on her face. Eleanor, I'm sorry, Rachel said. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to protect you. Eleanor's eyes narrowed as she looked up at Rachel. Protect me? She repeated. You call this protection? Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. I did it all for you, Eleanor, she said. I did it all to keep you safe. Eleanor's eyes locked on Rachel's, and for a moment, she saw something there that made her blood run cold. She saw a glimmer of insanity. And then, everything went black again. When Eleanor came to again, she was in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and sterile white walls. She had a pounding headache and a foggy memory. A nurse came in to check on her, smiling kindly. How are you feeling, dear? She asked. Eleanor tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness washed over her. What happened? She asked, her voice shaking. The nurse helped her lie back down. You were brought in unconscious, she explained. The police found you in a parking garage. You had a nasty bump on the head, but fortunately, it's just a concussion. Eleanor's mind was racing. She remembered the confrontation with Rachel, but everything after that was a blur. The nurse noticed her confusion. Don't worry, dear, she said. You'll remember everything in time. Just rest for now. But Eleanor couldn't rest. She had to know what had happened to Rachel. She had to know if she was safe. She pressed the nurse for more information, but the nurse just smiled and patted her hand. The police will come to talk to you soon, she said. They'll fill you in on everything. Eleanor had to wait for what felt like an eternity before the police arrived. When they did, it was the same officer who had been investigating Matthew's case. Eleanor, how are you feeling? He asked, his expression concerned. Eleanor tried to sit up again, but the officer gently pushed her back down. Just rest for now, he said. We'll talk about everything later. But Eleanor was insistent. What happened to Rachel? She asked, her voice firm. The officer's expression turned serious. Rachel is in custody, he said. She's being charged with attempted murder and kidnapping. Eleanor's eyes widened in shock. Kidnapping, she repeated. The officer nodded. Yes, Eleanor. Rachel had been holding you captive, manipulating you, and controlling your every move. But we're going to make sure she pays for what she's done. Eleanor felt a wave of relief wash over her. She was finally safe. Rachel was finally going to pay for her crimes. But as she lay back down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something didn't add up. And then she remembered the note. The note that Rachel had left for her. You'll never be safe, it had said. Eleanor's eyes snapped open, and she sat up in bed, her heart racing with fear. The officer was still sitting next to her, a concerned expression on his face. Eleanor, what's wrong? He asked. Eleanor's eyes locked on his. Rachel didn't act alone, she said, her voice firm. There's someone else out there, someone who's been pulling the strings all along. The officer's expression turned serious. We'll investigate, he said. We'll find out who's behind this and bring them to justice. But Eleanor knew that it wouldn't be that easy. She knew that she was still in danger, that she would never be safe until the truth was revealed. And so, she made a vow to herself. She would find out the truth, no matter what it took. She would uncover the secrets and lies, and she would bring the perpetrator to justice. Eleanor's eyes locked on the officers, and she smiled, a determined smile. I'm not going to let them win, she said. I'm going to fight back, and I'm going to make sure that justice is served. With newfound determination, Eleanor began her own investigation, working closely with the police to uncover the truth. She scoured through old records, interviewed witnesses, and followed every lead, no matter how small. As she dug deeper, she discovered a shocking web of deceit and corruption that went all the way to the top. She found evidence of embezzlement, bribery, and even murder, all connected to a powerful businessman who had been secretly controlling Rachel's actions. The businessman, named Victor, had been using Rachel to manipulate Eleanor and cover up his own crimes. He had been the one who had faked Matthew's death, and he had been the one who had been pulling the strings all along. With the evidence she had gathered, Eleanor went to the police and demanded that they arrest Victor. The police, finally convinced of Victor's guilt, raided his office and took him into custody. As Victor was led away in handcuffs, Eleanor felt a sense of closure and vindication. She had fought for justice, and she had won. But as she turned to leave, she saw a figure watching her from across the room. It was a woman with a familiar face. Eleanor's eyes narrowed as she realized who it was. It was James's wife, Sarah, and she was smiling. "You may have won this battle," Sarah said, her voice dripping with malice. "But the war is far from over." And with that, Sarah turned and walked away, leaving Eleanor with a sense of unease and foreboding. But Eleanor was not afraid. She had faced down danger and come out on top. She knew that she could handle whatever came her way. And so, with a newfound sense of confidence and determination, Eleanor walked out of the police station, ready to face whatever the future held. As Eleanor walked out of the police station, she couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's words had left her with. She knew that she had to be vigilant, that there were still people out there who wanted to harm her. She decided to take a taxi home, not wanting to walk alone in the dark. As she rode through the city, she couldn't help but think about all that had happened. She thought about Matthew and how his fake death had set off a chain of events that had almost destroyed her. She thought about Rachel and how her friend's betrayal had hurt her so deeply. But most of all, she thought about herself. She thought about how strong she had been, how resilient. She thought about how she had faced her fears and come out on top. As the taxi pulled up to her apartment building, Eleanor felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She knew that she had been through hell, but she also knew that she had made it through. She paid the taxi driver and got out of the cab, looking up at her apartment building with a sense of relief. She was finally home, finally safe. As she walked into her apartment, Eleanor was greeted by the familiar sight of her living room. She dropped her purse onto the couch and took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She walked over to the window and looked out, watching as the city lights twinkled below her. She felt a sense of gratitude for this new chapter in her life, for the chance to start over and leave the past behind. As she stood there, lost in thought, Eleanor heard a noise behind her. She turned to see a figure standing in the shadows, watching her. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized that she was not alone. And then, the figure stepped forward, revealing a shocking surprise. It was Matthew, standing in her living room, very much alive. Eleanor's eyes widened in shock as she stared at Matthew. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Matthew was supposed to be dead, but here he was, standing in her living room. "How is this possible?" Eleanor asked, her voice shaking with confusion. Matthew smiled, a mischievous glint in his eye. "I faked my own death," he said. "I had to. I was in danger, and I needed to disappear." Eleanor's mind was reeling. She couldn't believe that Matthew had faked his own death. She couldn't believe that he had put her through all that pain and suffering.
Why?
Eleanor asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did you do it? Matthew took a step closer to her, his eyes locked on hers. I did it to protect you, he said. I knew that you were in danger, and I had to get you away from it all. I had to make it look like I was dead so that you would be safe. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She wasn't sure if she believed Matthew. She wasn't sure if she could trust him. What danger? Eleanor asked, her voice firm. What were you protecting me from? Matthew hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. I'll tell you everything, he said. But you have to promise me that you'll listen. You have to promise me that you'll trust me. Eleanor hesitated, unsure of what to do. She didn't know if she could trust Matthew, but she also didn't know if she could afford not to. Okay, Eleanor said finally. I'll listen. I'll trust you. Matthew nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. Thank you, he said. Thank you for trusting me. And with that, Matthew began to tell Eleanor the truth. He told her about the danger that had been lurking in the shadows, the danger that had forced him to fake his own death. He told her about the people who had been trying to hurt her, the people who had been trying to control her. As Eleanor listened, she felt her mind reeling. She felt like she was living in a nightmare that she couldn't wake up from. But she also felt a sense of determination. She knew that she had to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. She knew that she had to fight back, no matter what the cost. And so, with Matthew by her side, Eleanor set out to uncover the truth. She set out to fight back against the people who had been trying to control her. And she set out to take back her life, no matter what it took. As Eleanor and Matthew delved deeper into the truth, they discovered a complex web of deceit and corruption that went all the way to the top. They found evidence of embezzlement, bribery, and even murder, all connected to a powerful organization that had been secretly controlling the city. The organization, known as the Syndicate, had been using its wealth and influence to manipulate the city's politicians, business leaders, and even law enforcement. They had been using their power to silence anyone who dared to speak out against them and to eliminate anyone who got in their way. Eleanor and Matthew knew that they had to be careful. They knew that the Syndicate would stop at nothing to keep their secret safe. But they also knew that they couldn't back down. They had to fight back, no matter what the cost. As they continued to investigate, they discovered that the Syndicate was led by a mysterious figure known only as the Archon. No one knew who the Archon was, or what their true motives were. But one thing was certain. The Archon was the most powerful person in the city, and they would stop at nothing to maintain their control. Eleanor and Matthew knew that they had to take down the Archon if they wanted to bring down the Syndicate. But they also knew that it wouldn't be easy. The Archon was a ghost, a shadowy figure who seemed to be always one step ahead of them. As they continued to investigate, they received a message from an unknown sender. The message was simple. Meet me at the old warehouse at midnight. Come alone. Eleanor and Matthew looked at each other, unsure of what to do. But they knew that they couldn't ignore the message. They had to know who was behind it and what they wanted. As they made their way to the warehouse, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. But they also knew that they had to take the risk. They had to know the truth no matter what the cost. As they entered the warehouse, they saw a figure waiting for them in the shadows. The figure stepped forward, revealing a shocking surprise. It was Sarah, James's wife. and she had a gun pointed directly at Eleanor's head. "You should have stayed out of this, Eleanor," Sarah said, her voice cold and calculating. "You should have stayed out of our business." Eleanor's eyes widened in shock as she realized the truth. Sarah was the Archon, the leader of the syndicate, and she was determined to silence Eleanor once and for all. Eleanor's eyes locked onto Sarah's, and she could see the cold calculation in them. She knew that she had to think fast, or she would be dead. "Sarah, what's going on?" Eleanor asked, trying to stall for time. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah smiled, a cold, mirthless smile. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game, Eleanor," she said. "And pawns are expendable." Eleanor's mind was racing. She knew that she had to get out of there, and fast. She looked around the warehouse, trying to spot any potential escape routes. That's when she saw Matthew, sneaking up behind Sarah. He had a look of determination on his face, and Eleanor knew that he was going to try and save her. Sarah, however, was too quick. She spun around, gun still pointed at Eleanor, and saw Matthew approaching. "Aha, Matthew," Sarah said, her voice dripping with malice. "I've been expecting you. You're just in time to watch Eleanor die." Eleanor's heart sank. She knew that she was running out of time. She looked at Matthew and saw the desperation in his eyes. And then, in a flash of inspiration, Eleanor remembered the GPS tracker that Rachel had planted on her car. She remembered how it had been used to track her movements and how it could be used to track Sarah's movements as well. With a surge of adrenaline, Eleanor made a split-second decision. She lunged at Sarah, grabbing her wrist and twisting it hard. The gun went flying out of Sarah's hand, and Eleanor quickly grabbed it. She pointed it at Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's over," Eleanor said, her voice firm. "You're not going to hurt anyone else." Sarah's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Eleanor thought she saw a glimmer of fear. But then, Sarah's face smoothed out, and she smiled again. "We'll see about that," Sarah said, and with a sudden movement, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. Eleanor's eyes widened as she realized what it was. It was a detonator, and Sarah was going to use it to blow up the warehouse. With a surge of adrenaline, Eleanor reacted. She grabbed Matthew and pulled him towards the door, shouting at him to run. As they stumbled out of the warehouse, Eleanor heard the sound of the detonator being triggered. She looked back and saw the warehouse erupting into flames. Eleanor and Matthew stumbled away from the inferno, gasping for air. They looked at each other, and Eleanor saw the relief in Matthew's eyes. "It's over," Matthew said, his voice shaking with emotion. "We made it out alive." Eleanor nodded, feeling a sense of closure wash over her. It was finally over. The nightmare was finally over. But as they walked away from the burning warehouse, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that there were still secrets lurking in the shadows. Secrets that would one day come back to haunt her. As they walked away from the burning warehouse, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that there were still secrets lurking in the shadows. She knew that Sarah had been working for a larger organization, and that there were likely others out there who were still a threat. "I need to go to the police," Eleanor said, turning to Matthew. "I need to tell them everything." Matthew nodded, his expression serious. "I'll come with you," he said. "We'll tell them everything together." As they made their way to the police station, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that she had finally brought down the person responsible for the threats against her, but she also knew that there were likely others out there who were still a threat. When they arrived at the police station, Eleanor was greeted by the same detective who had been working on her case. He listened intently as she told him everything from the threatening messages to the warehouse explosion. As she finished her story, the detective nodded, his expression serious. "We'll do everything we can to bring down the organization that's been threatening you," he said. "But I have to warn you, Eleanor, this is just the beginning. There are likely others out there who are still a threat, and we'll need to work together to bring them down." Eleanor nodded, feeling a sense of determination wash over her. She knew that she had finally found the courage to stand up for herself, and she was ready to face whatever came next. As she left the police station with Matthew, Eleanor felt a sense of hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. She knew that she still had a long way to go, but she also knew that she was finally on the right path. And as they walked away from the police station, Eleanor turned to Matthew and smiled. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for being here for me." Matthew smiled back, his eyes warm with emotion. "I'll always be here for you, Eleanor," he said. "We're in this together, now and forever." As they walked off into the sunset, Eleanor knew that she had finally found the happiness and closure she had been searching for. She had faced her fears and overcome them, and she had found a love that would last a lifetime.